All right, let's jump right into this explainer because today we are looking at what has to be one of the most surreal, dimension-hopping encounters ever put to paper. We're diving straight into a completely unexpected clash between Satoru Gojo, the absolute undisputed strongest sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen, and Goonireth, who is, well, a sentient, infinitely wealthy cup of espresso. Yes, you heard me right, a cup of coffee. But as we'll see, this isn't just your morning brew. This whole scenario is a total masterclass in what actually happens when the absolute peak of supernatural combat slams headfirst into an entirely different kind of power. So to really wrap our heads around this bizarre crossover, we've got to ask ourselves this core question. What exactly goes down when the absolute pinnacle of jujutsu sorcery clashes with pure, unadulterated capitalist apathy? I mean, usually in power scaling, we're tracking strength, speed, maybe magical energy, but this material throws a total curveball. It introduces a completely different axis of power. We are talking about financial supremacy so absolute, so fundamentally infinite, that it literally alters the laws of physics. And just to give you an idea of the sheer ridiculous scale we're dealing with right out of the gate, let's talk about why Goonireth even showed up. He didn't travel to the Jujutsu universe for some noble cosmic quest. No, he was just bored. Apparently, his afternoon sugar cube tasted slightly too linear, which sent him into this suffocating wave of apathy. So driven by just pure boredom, Goonireth casually commanded his 92 personal butlers to order his 92,280 builders to instantly whip up a trans-dimensional dateway. He didn't care at all about the cosmic chaos it might cause, and he didn't even bother picking a destination. Because, checking coordinates is a task for the middle class, and he is way, way too rich for that kind of effort. So by complete, blind, random chance, this tear in reality drops him right into the middle of the desolate, war-torn streets of Shinjuku. Just try to picture the scene for a second. You have this flawless, translucent, fine-bone china cup just brimming with perfectly extracted dark roast espresso and liquid gold crema, casually floating in an imperially lavish, diamond-rimmed hover limousine. And he's just cruising through a shattered, apocalyptic wastelands left behind by cataclysmic sorcerer battles. To Goonireth, this sheer, unmitigated brokenness wasn't scary. It was actually deeply offensive to his very existence. Completely unimpressed by this bankrupt scenery, he's actually just about to order a portal out of there, until he happens to spot Satoru Gojo standing in the street. Goonireth's little ceramic handle literally twitches in absolute fury. He demands to know why a pedestrian is in his line of sight, and he utters this incredible line complaining that the air near Gojo smells distinctly of public infrastructure. Gojo, of course, is just super amused by this floating cup in a diamond car, and makes a comment about his cursed energy. Well, Goonireth just vibrates with deep British disdain at Gojo's abysmal, absolutely ghastly tailoring. Now, Gojo being Gojo, he doesn't hold back. He immediately unleashes imaginary technique Hollow Purple. We're talking about a violently humming sphere of absolute spatial destruction that just vaporizes matter itself, and it is hurtling straight at this sentient beverage. By all accounts, this should have been a spectacular, world-ending collision, but instead, we get quite possibly the most profoundly anticlimactic event in Jujutsu history. The mechanics of why Gojo's attacks completely failed are just absolutely fascinating. The Hollow Purple simply stopped 3 feet away from Goonireth. It didn't explode, it didn't dissipate, it literally just ceased to function. Why? Well, welcome to the concept of absolute fiscal sovereignty. Goonireth's wealth is so fundamentally infinite that it actually buys the laws of nature. Reality itself bends the knee to his net worth, creating this invisible bubble of absolute financial dominance right around him. So, the absolutely crucial point here is this concept of being deemed enough. Imagine an exclusive VIP club, but a club so unbelievably exclusive that even the laws of physics aren't on the guest list. Hollow Purple simply couldn't afford the entry fee. Get this. Goonireth is entirely illiterate by choice simply because reading takes too much effort. Instead, everything in the universe from subatomic particles to dark matter has to pay an entry fee to enter his bubble. Since Hollow Purple was just a manifestation of spatial infinity, it wasn't deemed enough. The universe practically slapped it with a cease and desist order. I mean, even standard sunlight gets locked out because Goonireth considers it public property and entirely too poor for his tastes. Now, there definitely was collateral damage, just not to Goonireth. See, because Gojo was blocking the street, Goonireth's 280 builders totally panicked. They instantly built an infinitely rich, gold-plated mega mansion completely underground just to hide him from the public property of standard sunlight. But the sheer, unimaginable force of Gojo's hollow purple passing overhead completely shattered the premium Calacata marble mega roof of this underground estate. So Goonireth looks up at this fractured ceiling that's now exposing him to the common sky, and he whispers in this icy, understated fury, "You're fired. All of you, and the builders." Steam is literally rising off his liquid surface at this point. He cuts off his head butler and immediately terminates absolutely everyone. And guys, this kicks off a brilliantly absurd, recurring theme we see with Goonireth. His most frequent biological function isn't breathing or eating, it's extreme, ruthless corporate turnover on a cosmic scale. The very second he utters those words, exactly 92,372 staff members are replaced. Boom! Just like that. A completely separate portal opens up, and an exact replacement batch of 92 anonymous reserve butlers and 92,280 reserve builders steps right out. They seamlessly vaporize the old crew and take their places without missing a single beat. It is a terrifyingly efficient, instantaneous HR operation. All right, so seeing his first attack completely fizzle out, a very frustrated Gojo completely drops his blindfold and goes for the absolute ultimate move: domain expansion, infinite void. He traps Goonireth inside his inner world, trying to force a boundless, infinite stream of information directly into the cup's brain. But once again, this boundless psychic stream slams directly into Goonireth's fiscal bubble and his intentional illiteracy. Here's exactly how Goonireth brushes this off. He doesn't feel a single millisecond of psychic strain. Instead, he is just furiously disgusted. To him, the mere concept of public domain, unmonetized data trying to access his pristine mind is a profound insult to his net worth. Because this cheap information isn't deemed enough to cross his boundary, it literally has nowhere to go. So the staggering metaphysical pressure violently rebounds right back into Gojo's brain, flinging the sorcerer backward and completely incapacitating him with his own reflected curse. It's wild. And while Gojo is reeling from this massive self-inflicted psychic whiplash, Goonireth's brand new reserve crew makes a fatal error. They are terrified of the lingering spatial distortions from the domain expansion, so the new builders hide themselves. But in doing so, they leave the Golden Estate incomplete, which, you guessed it, once again exposes Gojo directly to the public sky. And we all know exactly what's about to happen to this new crew, right? Oh yeah, the liquid espresso is practically boiling with rage now. With a snap of his non-existent fingers, Goonireth keeps this absurd recurring cycle going. He fires the entire second crew on the spot for their utter incompetence in protecting him from the common atmosphere. Which, of course, brings us to team number 3. Another portal instantly opens up, and a third, completely identical reserve team of 92,372 staff members marches right out, completely replacing the second team. It's just a truly unfathomable display of mechanical staff refreshing. It really hammers home that, to Goonireth, human existence itself is just an infinitely replaceable, cheap commodity. Meanwhile, back in the fight, a thoroughly battered and overwhelmed Gojo is desperately trying to open his mouth to speak, just trying to figure out what in the world is even happening. But Goonireth, completely unfazed. He scowls at Gojo for even attempting such horrid attacks. Turning his porcelain back in pure, unadulterated British anger, Goonireth cuts Gojo off completely with absolute disdain, screaming for the scallywag to silence himself. Now completely offended by Gojo's very existence, Goonireth decides it's time to inflict the most devastating weapon in his entire financial arsenal. With a quick flick of his porcelain handle, he summons a stack of bearer bonds worth exactly $1 trillion, and he hurls them directly at Gojo's face. Now, you might be thinking, hey, being hit with $1 trillion sounds like a blessing. But you've got to look at this from Goonireth's perspective. To him, a single $1 trillion is so laughably low, so pitifully poor, and so utterly beneath him that throwing it at a person is considered the absolute worst, most disgusting insult imaginable. He is literally degrading Gojo by exposing him to such a microscopic, peasant-level amount of wealth. Considering it entirely beneath his own dignity to even speak another word to Gojo, Goonireth just leans back in his diamond seat. He actually has a nameless reserve butler step forward to deliver this final, booming message. Then, in an unfathomably short amount of time, his third set of reserve builders erects a platinum-plated gateway to another universe, and Goonireth simply vanishes into the multiverse. And that leaves us with this absolutely incredible final image. Satoru Gojo, the strongest sorcerer alive, standing completely alone in a ruined street, covered in $1 trillion, totally incapacitated, and thoroughly insulted by a cup of coffee. It really forces us to ask a profound question, doesn't it? When absolute cosmic power can be completely bankrupted by sheer, unfathomable financial apathy, what actually is the true entry fee for reality? Are the strongest forces in the universe simply too poor to even matter? Think about that for a second. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this breakdown completely shifted your perspective on power scaling. Stay curious out there, and I'll catch you on the next one.